Hi, friends. Host Eric here. Host Talking to Fantasy People. First, let me just say this live stream tonight is going to feature 80% fewer lies and malfeasance. 80% fewer lies and 80% less malfeasance than normal. So that's a pretty good deal for you right off the bat. Especially considering normally I don't feature a whole lot of lying or malfeasance. So, you know, standing out. Enigma of identity. Doesn't that sound like a fancy title? Sounds pretty fancy to me. Thing is, a lot of people in the world, including myself, would like to stand out. In other words, would like to be perceived as unusually accomplished in a given field or area or whatever. The thing is, I would like to stand out in multiple such areas that I'm interested in. You know, I'd like to stand out, I guess, as a writer. I'd like to stand out as a songwriter for sure. I'd like to stand out as a politician. I'd like to stand out in cognitive functions. I would say I'd like to stand out in debate, except I've already accomplished that. The thing about standing out, though, is, you know, when you get competitive about shit and you're trying to stand out, it means you're trying to defeat somebody else, basically. You know, you're trying to win. And it's very easy to get distracted by that from what matters. Like, yeah, winning matters, but you realize when you get up towards the pinnacle of a given field or whatever, that's it. There's the payoff's just the same. Repeat, you know. It's like when I was kicking ass with my debate teams, taking big squads, winning tournaments, winning championships and shit. It was gratifying, but I realized after a couple years, that's it. That's all there is to it. You know, it's just like you put a lot of energy in, you yell at the kids a bunch, and you win again. And at some point, it stops surprising you so much, and you start going, okay, so now what? You know, how do I? Where's the mic drop moment? You know. Hi, Lawnmower. Thanks for joining us this evening. Always a pleasure to see you. I went to go to sleep with Rachel, but was still feeling a little restless. Came out here, rubbed one out. It never takes very long. It's like, it's weird how fapping is so much faster than sex. Like, fapping is just like, boom, I'm done. Okay. But that's not that's not how it goes with sexual intercourse at all. But I don't know. It's like your body knows. If you just have to go number 3, or if you're, you know, making love with a sexual lady, you know, one of the two things. Yeah, Isaac Grigetta, you know what I'm talking about. You've been there. You've been there. You've been like, okay, I'm not sleepy. I'm going to fap real quick. Incognito window. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, that category is fine. And then, oh, all done with that. I guess I'll live stream now. It's like, boom, done. Hi, Andre Marshall Camp. That sounds like a very, very strict camp. I go to Marshall Camp. It's martial law 24/7. It's spelled differently than that, Eric, says Andre Marshall Camp. Okay, it's spelled differently. Fine. I actually know somebody, childhood friend's father was named Marshall Mabry. In fact, I spoke to this childhood friend a few years back Thanks for talking with famous people. She's an ENFP, which explains why I never really got along with her that well. So anyway, standing out. Standing out's a tough reality for anybody because, first of all, if you're going to try to stand out, there are some techniques that you can use to make it a lot more palatable to people. One technique that I've noticed, like the charisma guy uses. I don't know if you ever watched this guy. There's this guy who does these charisma videos. He's like a ginger. He talks with kind of like this artificially manly voice, like anyway, the way that he says what he believes to be true and expresses it as, here's something for you to learn from me, is he always positions it as revealing something that some third party knows rather than something he came up with, right? So, I mean, people really don't like the idea that I'm explaining something and being right about something because I'm right about it rather than because I'm citing an expert or something. Red pill videos? No, I don't know. I click recommended videos sometimes, and one of his charisma thing videos, which was about basically it was like a video. It was interesting enough to keep me watching it. It was a video about what to do if somebody's trying to clown you, like at a bar or whatever. Charisma on command, yeah. So anyway, he told this story of how he went up to join this group. He and somebody else had come to join this group of people, like maybe he had a date or something. And at this table, there was this kind of like alpha guy, right? Who really felt like he was king of the table. And so charisma on command guy came up to him and said, hey, what's going on? Nice to meet you. I'm whatever my name is. And the guy just sort of glanced at him and ignored him and continued saying what he was saying to the other person. So charisma on command guy recommended that, or said what he did, and it sounds like a good idea, is he got super loud, like, hello! And as soon as the guy actually looked at him, he's like, really nice to meet you. Like, changed his tone abruptly, So the guy at that point is totally off balance and has to sort of shake his hand and be like, oh, yeah. And no one's really sure what's going on. If someone were to come up with a system exactly the same as yours, except his SI definition is your definition of NI real time and your definition of SI turn-based and vice versa. Well, I mean, the thing is, it wouldn't be exactly the same then, except for that, because the reason SI is real time and not turn-based is because it takes subjective impressions of your experiences and retains them as memories. Now, granted, when it does that, it's not operating in real time. It's using the turn-based modality of it. But it sounds like this person, I mean, look, that question is a weird question. If someone were to come up with a system exactly the same as yours, first of all, note, I did not come up with my system. I took a lot of existing information about cognitive functions and I figured out what was wrong with the way people were approaching it, and I solved that. So it's like there are a lot of ideas that I have introduced to cognitive functions, such as real-time and turn-based, right? And talking about them in those ways, about the different fields and how we can't meaningfully talk about functions without distinguishing between metaphysical fields and physical fields at least, and probably internal and external as well. So I've introduced a lot of terms like that to help us to be more serious in our conversations about it, right? Because it's not the case that there's a bunch of people doing different ideas of cognitive functions, all competing to be, have some piece of the correctness pie. It is the case that I'm like Isaac Newton trying to figure out calculus. And these other people are putting random numbers and shit together and going, look, calculus. That's the reality of it. Sorry, I mean, it just is. They don't know how to model things. They don't know how to taxonomy things. They don't know how to think about things. And they're not thinking about things correctly. If you start at the wrong spot and you build on a wrong foundation, you're going to have to tear your whole shit down. It's just how it is. I associating NITB with NIRT and SITB with NIRT and not vice versa is arbitrary. Well, no, because introverted sensing begins first and foremost as a physical experience of the body in real time. Okay. So we know that SI is has the most powerful, perhaps, real-time call upon you of any function. If you got a bad stomach ache, you're not going to be, doing the limbo. No, it is possible to know. And the thing is this. The key thing is this. You start with indisputable observations. And there are plenty that are the reason why Jung was able to intuit this whole idea in the first place. He intuited the whole thing sort of holistically, right? There's a reason he was able to do that. It's because there genuinely are distinctions to be made that are indisputable. And so once we begin with those axiomatic principles, like, okay, well, what do we know experientially, observationally, nobody can dispute as a statement, a distinction to be drawn? What distinctions can we reliably assume have an inherent exclusivity to them, and why? When I'm typing somebody, what is the question I'm asking trying to do? How will I know if it's successful? In what way can I compare this answer to other answers to either clarify how questions link to functions, validate an existing notion, falsify an existing notion, or whatever else? Those kind of questions have to be asked continually. Right. An example of an indisputable observation is that people use a fully objective calculus from time to time and expect certain people to always use an objective calculus. For example, referees. If somebody thinks a referee is biased against a team, they freak out because it's their job to be unbiased. It's their job to be a disinterested party. The whole idea of a disinterested evaluation metric is saying, I'm not in favor of either of these teams. I'm going to evaluate it fairly, right? So everybody understands that it is possible to have a biased evaluation of something or an unbiased evaluation of something. That if Uncle Bob shows up and he goes, whoa, these two kids are fighting, and the two kids are fighting over who gets My Little Pony, and Uncle Bob doesn't have any preferences, then he's probably going to be able to articulate who's actually in the right in the situation because he's a disinterested party. Whereas neither of the individual kids is likely to be reliable about articulating correctly who's right. Now, if it's a TI user, they might very well be correct about it, but as kids, they probably won't be able to articulate it particularly well yet. So yeah, that's a good example of an indisputable observation that a disinterested calculus is different from an interested calculus. And while they can sometimes align perfectly, in other words, exactly what I want might also be exactly what's the most fair thing, right? But that when they conflict, they produce an inherent exclusivity because of the nature of the process. So these are the sort of things we can hang our hats on, right? Because they're relationally defined, they're relatively absolute, which is to say, as long as we keep in mind the relational aspects of definitions, we can be absolute about it because, I may not be able to say an ESTP definitely uses a disinterested calculus. But one thing we can all agree on is when an ESTP is using a disinterested calculus successfully, he's not allowing his individual bias to influence the decision making. That's definitionally so, right? So it's because of things like that that allow us to build very slowly over a long period of time with a lot of empirics. Remember, I've typed a lot of people. In fact, I typed an INFJ earlier today who I believe is going to let me publish the video. I haven't checked back to see if I got another communication with him. Basically, like as we were parting, he basically said, "Go ahead and publish it," but he said, "Just let me check it real quick." So I'm not gonna publish it like an official go ahead from him. But that was an interesting session, and he's in the stronger range of third slot TI. For a stretch, I thought he was second slot TI, and my initial thing in looking at him was just looking at and hearing his first couple sentences was ENFJ. Then I moved to ESTP, and eventually I realized, no, he's an INFJ. He's an INFJ with strong TI, but it's not that strong. When you push on it a little bit harder, you realize, oh, it's too slow for second slot. Now, there are plenty of legitimate ways to critique my approach, too. I want to stress this. You could say, you spend too much time testing the functions that correlate more strongly to skills, and you don't do a robust enough job of evaluating other functions on non-skills metrics, which you're going to have to do since you don't have skills tests for everything. That would be a very fair critique of me, I think. I need to incorporate more values analysis unavoidably, and I need to be able to do it more successfully. But I still think I'm the most successful typologist out there in terms of getting it right. Well, yes and no, Stuart Johnson. So non-skills tests can be cheated easily, except for this kind of non-skills test. Is there anything you'd like me to know before I begin typing you? Depending on how they answer that question is very revelatory. And there's a lot of other kind of open-ended questions like that. They can be very revelatory and very difficult even for strong intuitives to game because they don't know what exactly I'm looking for. I can guarantee you very rarely, sometimes, I do have a certain amount of self-reporting questions, and I definitely do use these self-reporting answers sometimes. To some extent, but I typically asterisk them when I'm explaining afterwards. I go, okay, well, these self-reporting answers suggested, yeah, I don't really rely on self-reporting answers in general, but they're consistent with what I'm saying in these other things, so I mention it anyway or something, I also might mention, but don't rely on visual cues. So this guy looks like a fucking straight up INFJ. Like physically, he looked like Corey. He looked like a young Corey. But that didn't even come into my decision making at all because that's not something I can use in my justifications. I can't explain to somebody why they're a type because they look like a type. That's not an explanation. Isn't he in prison? How can a new 6ix9ine video come out when he's in prison? Jail for MC assault. He was released because of COVID. Is that true or a joke? He came out back in like May. He's paying security. All right, so his snitching on that gang got him that much of a reduced sentence because I thought he was looking at like 60 years or something. That's crazy. I mean, he's a horrible person, It's not like he's actually a criminal. He's like a rapist and stuff like that. So, I am all in favor of actual criminals receiving criminal punishment. I'm not opposed to punishment. Oh, come on. Look at his story a little bit. He's not a good guy, I'll tell you that. Come on, Lawnmower. For somebody who's always freaking out about Hollywood's pedo shit, look at 6ix9ine. I know he's young, but still, he's not as young as what he's into. Okay, well, regardless. You know what else surprised me as far as the criminal justice outcome? I am shocked at how little time that lady with the college thing got. Not because she deserved so much more or whatever, but just because everyone was so clamoring for blood. Okay, so Lawnmower, why are you making these excuses for him, but you never seem to make these excuses for the dominant elites in Hollywood and stuff? I mean, look, 13, 13. You gotta come on. There's the onus is on the person to make sure they're not being exploitative, even if the person they're exploiting seems eager to be exploited. I mean, 13-year-old girls are not famous for making the wisest life decisions, which is why we afford them some extra protections. It's because that lady has money. I mean, I think it's because ultimately she didn't really do anything that bad. She did the same sort of thing that everybody does, except she took it to the next level, you know? I'm not saying she shouldn't get punished, but I am saying this, that the whole compulsory school college thing is a huge fucking racket anyway, and who gives a fuck about it? Yeah, Lawnmower, it's like I'm aware of the fact that there are some very non-innocent younger people. But the thing is, even if that's the case, we put the onus where it belongs on the adults to make sure that they don't contribute to that. No, but that's not more precise or mechanical. That's not how it works anyway. It's not that the next subject being observed is completely determined by meaning assigned to the last subject that was analyzed, because meaning is not that fluid. So there are some meanings that are not fluid at all. As we were discussing in the earlier live stream, your statement connectives are universally defined the same way, and or if then not. Um, but other meanings can be determined either by general usage and consensus, or by agreement, or by contention. So in other words, somebody can win the argument, you can agree, or it could be not even in dispute. So the thing is, TI is about parsing definitionally. That's true. But most of all, it owes its origins and the nature of logic in general to those little words, the statement connectives that comprise the real engine of communication and logic, and or if then not. I mean, he's not a good musician either, is the thing about 6ix9ine. If he made good songs, fine. I haven't heard anything by him that's even remotely worth listening to. I'm not claiming that I am knocking out the hits, right? It's like, obviously I struggle too musically, but I take my musical struggles seriously. I work very hard at trying to get better and shit. This guy's he's okay. Well, look, I agree that's its own form of genius of sorts. If you haven't seen it and you want to see a video that is incredibly revelatory about ESFPs and intuitives, watch the Banksy documentary. Okay, the Banksy documentary is not really about Banksy, although he made it. And it's only nominally about the street art movement that he sort of flagships. It's really about this guy, this artist called Mr. Brainwash. So Mr. Brainwash is this guy. It's Banksy. You know that famous artist who nobody knows who he is, and he he was famous for doing street art in London, and then painting things on buildings, places. And he made a painting that he sold at Tiffany's or something like that, one of those auction houses. And after it sold, he had it set up so that the painting came down through the bottom of the frame, which was a paper shredder, and shredded it. Yeah. And everyone's like, it's probably worth more now, because Banksy's always pointing out the idiocy of the art world, right? Anyway, but this Banksy thing, first of all, he's a brilliant artist. You can see how great his art is just by, you look at the various artists featured in this film, and you can tell who really stands out, who's really talented. And Banksy is really, really talented. So, it's like there's a reason why he's so famous. Anyhow, the main character in the movie, though, is this guy who's of French birth, but lives in Los Angeles for a long time. And I forget what his real name is, but he's an ESFP who somehow sort of makes himself useful, gets around these people, and gets invited to go follow all these very famous street artists around and film them. Eventually people start asking, well, why are you filming us? Why do you keep filming us all the time? Well, what was this ESFP doing? He was just filming constantly, putting the tapes, because he was filming on, tapes in boxes, and never watching them, or had no plans of doing anything with it, right? But he said in response, I'm making a documentary, because what are you going to say if somebody says, why are you going around filming us, right? And so finally, after like 7 years of this shit, they're like, okay, we'll make your documentary. He had no idea how to make a documentary. And he made an hour and a half long, completely unwatchable series of jump cut, crazy, like, early MTV kind of noise over pictures shit, right? Okay, that's what this ESFP made. Terrible artist. But, Banksy was just like, oh, Jesus. He liked the dude, he trusted the dude. The dude was sort of his go-to gopher guy, right? Always down to help, always down to... So he said, well, look, why don't you just have a gallery show or something? Give me the tapes, and I'll make a documentary. That's how this documentary can be made, right? And so the guy goes, okay, I'll have a gallery show. I see what you guys do. So what did he do? He hired people who were actually good artists to make art that then he put his name on, and he filled a gallery full of it, and he did all the marketing shit that he saw Banksy do and stuff, and he got some of his art world people that he knew to give him kind of like a endorsement, which they're all like totally embarrassed about now. And then he proceeded to sell like $2 million worth of paintings that he had subcontracted out to other people to make. And he was the artist because he picked which ones made the cut and which ones didn't. Okay. And then sold the fuck out of this shit. And then parlayed this into getting to be the artist who was responsible for the album cover for Madonna's Greatest Hits, I think. Anyway, which makes sense because Madonna's got no fucking intuition either. And it is the craziest thing you've ever seen. It's like, see, this is the reality of it. You've got these intuitives who comprise the genuine heart and meat and everything of this art movement. Okay? Varying degrees of genius. The most genius ones are hugely successful, like Banksy. Anybody who's somewhat less than that probably is just at best, a little bit of a blip in the art world, and not much more than that. The street artists that aren't Banksy. But they're still 100,000 times more genius than this ESFP. So which of them is by far the most successful of all of these artists, except for Banksy? Fucking Mr. Brainwash, who doesn't even make his own art, and who says, I had a realization one day. Look, I figured out what this art is. Art is brainwashing. he says it like, oh, intuition. It's just like, oh my God. Ah! But of course, nobody ever went broke overestimating the stupidity of the American people. Here's the thing, James. Mr. Brainwash in no way, shape, or form breezed through life. He worked really hard to put this show together. And at the same time, completely missed the point of everything. He's not an artist. He's just trying to be a art selling thing. It's like he doesn't get that being able to sell the art is supposed to come from people responding to your standout talent. And that it doesn't work the other way around. That being able to sell your art doesn't prove that you're a standout talent. In fact, like all of the serious artists in the movie are like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. Just all like that, But he's still the most successful one. And that's what ESFPs get to do, is they get to go, well, fuck you. I got these millions of dollars and I sold all this shit. And you say I'm not getting the point, but I'm getting the point all the way to the bank. You're right, Eric. As a Christian, you shouldn't. You shouldn't what? What did I say you shouldn't do? Did I say you shouldn't do something? I don't know what I said you shouldn't do, but a sense of masculinity I acquire from it, and I try to use it in a filtered and sinful way. Masculinity you acquire from what? Have you been watching MMA again? We've talked about that lawnmower. That's too much masculinity for you. Oh, 6ix9ine music. Oh, okay. Well, just watch MMA instead. You'll be fine. Okay, so Stuart Johnson, I don't know if you were here yesterday, but we were having a conversation about this very thing and some of my concerns about untied up loose ends in this specific area. Okay, so let me recap basically what I was saying yesterday. What I happened to be saying yesterday, since you happen to be hitting on a spot of weakness, naturally, because you probably found one, right, is that from what I can tell, the only functions that you can clearly say operate in both turn-based and real-time modalities, in no uncertain terms, are NI and SI. So it's like we can articulate a clear distinction about what NI real-time would look like, what SI real-time would look like. Now, we know NI real-time is the one where you're waiting for the timing to throw a spear at an animal or something, because it goes with SE. So, that's why we know it's NI, not SI. When you're waiting for the right moment to throw a spear, that's NI and SE working together. That's not SI and SE working together. So, I know, lawnmower, I'm just joking. I'm just making yokety yokes, okay? So I'm confident about NI and SI working that way. What I was saying yesterday in the stream was I've decided or come to the conclusion I don't think TI and FI have non-native timeline expressions. In other words, TI seems to be only conditional and seems to only be operant in a turn-based modality. I've come up with some stretches of possible examples of physical TI, but it's hard for me to even conceptualize. And the same with FI. Now, that may just be because I don't understand FI at all, but it seems unlikely that FI really can be turn-based because it's so linked to your experience fundamentally, right? So what we do know, however, is that even if a function doesn't express in that time modality, it can still express in that field. So the example of me responding to a situation in the physical world that should be responded to with physical action of some sort, and taking metaphysical action, namely saying words, it is my attempt to cause my turn-based approach to be successful in a real-time modality. It may or may not work, right? But any is still going to be turn-based, even if I'm using it in a circumstance that would be better served by a more real-time attentional manner. So the thing is, kind of what I concluded yesterday about this, or at least my temporary or tentative is the word I'm looking for, not temporary. My tentative thoughts on time and aspect is that first of all, you don't need to use, this is pretty clear, you don't need to use the other time modality to use the other frame. So, it's possible to stay within your own time modality in a different frame. And number two, that the only functions that I can clearly and obviously say seem to express in both time modalities are the two knowledge functions, which would make sense because your epistemology function is going to have to be able to incorporate data from both frames of reference. Okay, so here's my thoughts on the interface functions, Stuart Johnson. You came in a good day because I talked all this shit out yesterday. My thought on the interface functions is that FE converts subjective data in both external fields to objective data in the internal metaphysical field, and that TE converts subjective data from both physical fields, and that is to say, subjective data from your experience in the moment physically, but I guess it's more like for your SE data. Anyway, but regardless, let me not get bogged down. TE converts subjective data from the inside into objective reality outside. FE converts subjective data on the outside into objects of analysis on the inside. Well, sure. Look, the thing is, when we're talking about data being objective or subjective, the question about whether data is objective or subjective is simply a question of whether it's accessible to everybody. So, the attributes of this cup are objective because presumably anybody can come and measure the cup independently. That's what makes it objective, okay? So TE can uses lots of objective data. In other words, it's a dynamic interface thing. It's also true for FE. FE doesn't just gather data on other people's subjective experiences. It also interferes, right? It changes their subjective experiences. Same thing with TE. And in that regard, it's rendering something objective. But I think the quickest shorthand way to define the two interface functions is that FE dynamically interfaces with subjective data on the external fields in order to successfully interface with it internally on the metaphysical field. And that TE deals with your subjective internal things and manifesting them as objective realities externally. Now, to manifest them as objective realities externally, obviously you have to check what you're doing here against objective realities externally or objective data. So yeah, the interface function, when it's interfacing, is interfacing with things that are objectively so. In contrast, the interface function with FE is a little more wishy-washy. The words part, which FE can also spend time gathering, like which diction choices, that's a little bit more objective, but the more experiential aspects of it, namely, well, yeah, there are more than two meanings of objective. But if we're talking about data, there's only one meaning of it. If we're describing people, there's a second meaning of it. And if we're describing processes, TE users mean something different than TI users. TI users understand both meanings and are able to make the distinction. TE users typically fight against the validity of the TI half things. Oh my God, Bill Walton's here. Guys, I want to take a moment to celebrate the great and unfortunately not late Bill Walton, the worst announcer in the history of basketball at any level. It's like, I'm sure somewhere in the country, there's a nasally seventh grader with a stutter who is broadcasting his middle school basketball game. And that guy is 100 times better than Bill Walton. That's how horrible Bill Walton is. Now, I want to point something else out too. It's pretty obvious to me that Bill Walton is an ESTJ. So it seems like when I really feel a passionate dislike towards some media personality, there's a decent chance they're an ESTJ. It's just a notion I want to throw out there. Of course, it's also the case that if you are incredibly terrible at whatever media you're making, so terrible that you make the intuitive inside me die a little, very good chance you're an ESTJ. Dave Matthews, ESTJ. Dave Matthews is like, he's like a set of nunchucks at a spider web weaving party. Just completely having no clue what he's doing artistically, right? So concerned about what he's doing with his instrument, with his chops and stuff, that he can't even begin to consider the fact that, oh, hey, maybe my music should resonate intuitively a little bit with someone instead of being a bunch of random fucking garbage. I hate ESTJs making art. They have no business. Get away from it. You make terrible, terrible art. That's how my life gets shortened. When I turn on the TV one day in like 6 months or whatever, and I hear the following, and I'm Bill Walton, and I'm broadcasting this game, that takes minutes off of my life. People say cigarettes are bad for you. Bill Walton is bad for you. Bill Walton is bad for our souls. Our souls matter a lot, more than our bodies. People with incredibly terrible taste, Stuart Johnson. That's who? Who consumes ESTJ music and art? People with really, really, really shitty taste. That's who. It's like, who I love? Judge Judy, Bill Walton, and Dave Matthews. Oh my God. You're not allowed to have opinions about things anymore then. If you say that. Yes, I finished Wheel of Time. No, I never read Game of Thrones. I don't want to get into a big book series either. Reading a big series of books is kind of a big time commitment. The other thing is I actually have a reading list from Pauley High School that I got to do for my client. They're paying me to read the same book that their kids reading in an English class so that, I can help them prep for tests or whatever. He doesn't even need it. It's like he's perfectly competent in these things. I'm also doing test prep with him, like SAT test prep. So I took half of the practice test with my client, and I did not get 100% on it. One of the questions I disagree with. The other ones, when I saw the answer, I was like, Eric, you got to pay better attention than that. But I did not get 100%. I did do about twice as well as my client, but those are not easy tests, those SATs. I love the essay question format, though. The essay question format asks you to read an essay somebody else wrote and write an essay about their argumentation style. So it's like, I might as well just wrap it up, put a bow on it, and hand it to my kid. He's going to just kill, you know? Standardized testing. Okay, Bill Walton, I'm looking forward to you complaining about talking with famous people on national TV. That would literally shock the pants off of me. If you turned out to actually be Bill Walton and actually start talking shit on national TV about me, that would be the most shocking thing that ever happened to me in my life. I don't dislike them at all. I mean, they're much better than non-standardized assessments. This is the thing. People who disapprove of standardized assessments are not thinking. You know who's not cringy? Who's a blonde chick in old movies? Who's very sexy? Bernadette Peters. When I was a kid, I was just like, oh, Bernadette Peters. Someday I'm going to have a girlfriend like Bernadette Peters. She's like kind of kiki with these big old boobies and stuff, you know. I was smitten with her. Even like when I was like a 7 or 8 year old or something, I remember just being like, that lady's pretty. No, Morge, you've always done well on standardized tests. Okay. Well, what's interesting is the first one that we worked on together uses a great excerpt from a Saki story. And it's a really good check of how well you read for subtext. Like, my kid struggled a bit on the questions on this one. So it would be practice test 3 questions. If you look at, I'll put the link here. Yeah, I've had INFJ students who stood out. The debater that stood out most as an INFJ was named Lyle. He was pretty damn good. And he and Edmund as a team absolutely slayed through elementary school, 6th grade, did fantastic. But then Lyle got sidetracked on something else. And no matter how nice he was about it, he ceased to prioritize debate adequately in my mind. No, your FE is not going to work on me, Lyle. I know you're prioritizing orchestra. I'm going to come over to your house and break your goddamn cello. God bless you too, lawnmower. How do young INFJs differ from older ones? Well, I mean, they're surprisingly not that different. I mean, kids are not that different than the older versions of them in general. ISTPs are like ISTPs when they're kids too. ESTPs are like ESTPs when they're kids. ENTPs are like ENTPs when they're kids. My client is an ENTP, so it's really easy for me to work with him because I always understand exactly why he meowed the meow, even if it pisses me off. So I recognize, okay, you're ignoring NI again. Okay, Jeffrey, fucking NI. Let's go over what it means again and how you need to pay attention to it. So when somebody runs a case, ask yourself before you decide what you're going to run against it, instead of just going with this new idea you just came up with or whatever. I want you to say, what does my introvert intuition say? I'm going to ignore it anyway. How would you feel for an ENTP person with a speech impediment? I had a speech impediment when I was small. When I was little, I couldn't say my R's, so I pronounced my name Ewick Strauss. And one time, in fact, when I was very little, I was on this game show for kids that my parents went to a taping of. And they brought me onto the stage, and they said, what's your name, little boy? And I said, Ewick Strauss. And they said, Larry House? Eric Strauss. My parents like to tell me this story. I don't remember it. There's actually a tape somewhere, though. An old, maybe Betamax tape that exists somewhere, or did exist at one point, of that we somehow, my parents got a VHS filming of it or something. I don't remember. I have no idea. I was like, I don't even remember. I don't remember the experience at all. I just remember the story being told to me. I couldn't have been more than about, like 3 years old or something, probably. So I don't remember it myself. But anyway, of course, the other thing is I had two really bad injuries before I could remember. Okay. One, I burned the living shit out of my right hand, apparently on a light bulb. This is what my parents told me, that I was crawling around the house. It was like, I don't know how many months, probably 10 months old or something. And I put my hand on a hot light bulb and it just melted onto there. And then the other big injury I had as a baby was I cracked my skull open. I was, I guess, apparently, I don't remember this either, I was in one of those circle things that you put babies in that they walk around. It's got wheels on it, and I was going down the driveway and hit a rock and went, pow, cracked my head open. You can still feel very clearly that his forehead goes like this, and then there's this fault line here. So, I mean, when you don't remember at all, you never know. Who knows what happened? But the thing is, for all the parts of my life that I do remember, my parents were never anything remotely like abusive. So I just think I was a not very safe baby, But yeah, I know. Fourth slot SI. I wasn't defiant. No, I was dreamy in school. I always had books that I read under my desk at school. I read science fiction books all day at school, every day. As much of class time as I could spend secretly getting away with reading my science fiction and fantasy books under the desk, that's what I'd be doing. Sometimes I'd be so caught up in them that, like in middle school, I rode my bike to school, and I'd read my books while riding my bike to school and then crash my bike. I was famous for crashing my bike. Like, it was something like I got teased about a little bit. Like, I hated it too. I hated the fact that I had this reputation as, well, Eric, he'll probably crash his bike again. It's like, no, fuck you. I do not crash my bike all the time. Of course, I did crash my bike all the time. But if you're trying to read a book while you're riding your bike, you're going to crash into cars. What were my favorite books? I mean, I liked fantasy books, like Swords and Dragons books, and it kind of gave me a warped understanding of women. When I emerged into sort of late teens, early 20s, I had been raised to think by this massive number of books that I had read that were all basically kind of the same genre, that women were these pure, chaste things that you put up on pedestals, and that if you prove yourself worthy, they will deign to give themselves to you, and that you must respect that gift of their body because it's so precious, and they only give it away under very special circumstances, right? And of course, chicks aren't like that at all. I'm saying I thought that chicks were much more prudish than they turned out to be, and it wasn't that I was a simp. It's just, I just bought into that shit, I just bought into those stories. In a lot of ways, those things are written by nerdy guys who kind of put women on pedestals and don't really necessarily in the literatures always treat them as fully realized people, but rather as these sort of like rarefied creatures. You can't help but internalize some of that shit. Crashing your bike because you were reading your book sounds like an SE Polar meme. An SE Polar meme is making an SC Polar meme about crashing your bike while reading a book instead of actually doing it. It's talking about making an SC Polar meme. It is true, however, harvest the blood is just stupid since studies have shown it's not some miracle drug chemical. Harvest the blood? Who's harvesting my blood? Hey, that's not a crop. You can't harvest that shit. Who harvests that? You can only harvest crops, okay? You cannot harvest non-crops. For example, earlier, when I thought I was going to bed, right before I went to bed, I didn't harvest my toothbrush. I just brushed my teeth. Martin, now, if it's true that you can harvest souls, then it should also be true that you can plant a crop full of souls. And since I can't do the latter, it must not be true that I can do the former. Blood from adrenal glands. That's just that's this whole idea of adrenochrome or whatever you want to call it is something that Hunter S. Thompson made up. I wish ENTPs wouldn't think themselves clever for making up shit that people end up believing. The words you're looking for are resource exploitation or resource usage. But the idea of having to extract this adrenaline thing from living people is something Hunter S. Thompson made up. It first appeared in one of his books, and he just made it up. These are not the words you're looking for. This is not resource exploitation. This is not resource usage. These are not the words we're looking for. These aren't resource exploitation or resource usage. Oh. No, I'm sticking with harvest. I've changed my mind. Everything's harvested now. Everything. Right now, you're harvesting my golden wisdoms from a crop that you planted years ago by tilling the soil with your metaphysical plow. Deal with it. Deal with it. That's going to be my new catchphrase. Deal with it. What do you think? You think it's got legs as a catchphrase? People will be like high-fiving each other. Deal with it. Yeah, he said it. He said it. Oh my God, that was so awesome. You think it has legs for that? Someday people refer to me as the deal with it guy. Probably not. I don't think I've got enough commitment to deal with it to really bring it as a catchphrase, you know. Have you heard of Kuru's disease? People get it from Kuru. He's the sole distributor of his proprietary disease. That's why it's got his name on it. If you want to get Kuru's disease, you need to go see Kuru. It's his disease, and only he can give it to you. If we are all from source, then why shouldn't there be the choice of planting souls in order to fit into this material reality while still honoring the soul realm? I don't know, Martin, now, but this is a much more interesting question. Why are there blood types, right? This occurred the other day in the live stream, and I'm thinking about it since. Every bit of my intuition says it's going to be one of two ways. Either you can put anybody's blood in you, or you can only put your own blood in you. Why would there be some intermediate thing between that? It just doesn't feel intuitively like it should be that way, right? It feels constructed, tacked on almost. Yeah, CIA, John P. Murphy. I was talking about adrenochrome being a creation of Hunter S. Thompson in one of his books where he made up the whole thing including the idea that you can only harvest it from living people. Q or positive infinity. I'm not sure I understand what you mean, but I like the sound of it. You got two choices. What do you want? What's that bag? Oh, that's the Q bag. What's that? +8? No, that's a sideways 8. Positive infinity. So one bag is labeled Q and one bag is labeled positive infinity? Yeah, you choose which one you want. Does the bag's label reveal anything about the contents? No. Why did you label them that way? Just to confuse you. CIA, John P. Murphy, I actually believe that narrative. I'm not just playing along with your CIA disinformation campaign. If I am, it's by accident. Sometimes that's going to happen, you know. You know what they say about even broken squirrels needing to nut twice a day despite being blind? He's not a charlatan. He's a fiction writer. He made up random shit. He was not, okay, yes, he was both those things. Fine, he was both those things. But he was still super cool. All right. He makes, let's comprise a list. Let's make a list, guys. History's greatest loadies. I'm gonna add 2 right off the bat to this list. History's greatest loadies. They could be drunks, they could be drug addicts, whatever. So I'm gonna add Hunter S. Thompson, the good doctor. Obviously makes the list. I'm gonna add also the guy who said in the old cartoons, "Don't bother me, kid." That guy. What's his name? With a big bulbous nose. Pineapple juice guy. Drunk comedian. Pineapple juice. Oh, W.C. Fields, that's his name. W.C. Fields. I'm adding W.C. Fields to the list here. Define Lodi. Look, we all have our own definition of Lodi. We don't have to agree. If you put somebody, I say, I think they're not a Lodi, then we can argue about it then. W.C. Fields. Let's see. I'm going to add I think Keith Richards deserves to make the list because he's just, agelessly hardcore. Okay, one more. Actually, you misread that stat. It's 800,000 kids go fishing yearly. Okay, it's about the popularity of angling as an outdoor sport. I thought about Charlie Sheen just a second ago. I think I am going to include Charlie Sheen, but I like the idea of these sort of unrepentant ones. Charlie Sheen now thinks of his most epic time period as being a huge mistake, and that's right, Martinell. You can never be reminded too often of the following. Cold water, it's a watery grave. Mel Gibson, he's a famous Lodi. I was thinking Ben Affleck might make the famous Lodi list. He's known to be quite a drunk. But I know. Lindsay Lohan, of course. You've got to put Lindsay Lohan on here. Now, I am not one to particularly ogle or or talk about other chicks than my girlfriend being hot or whatever. But in the Saturday Night Live skit where Lindsay Lohan plays Hermione, like she comes back from summer with boobs, that's like, it's weird because it's a comedy skit, right? But I can't think of anything I've seen on TV where it's just like, it's like the old cartoons where the guy has his tongue roll out like this and he turns into a wolf and goes, wow. Oh, CIA, John P. Murphy. The answer is because of the conspiracies. They hide it from everybody. Look, but that's a really good question, though, Lawnmower, because seriously, if there are these fun drugs on the market, why can't I get them? I mean, come on. Why am I being denied these fun drugs? Why did nobody ever offer me this? People know I'm down to buy drugs a lot of times. So, people offer me them. People come up to me in strange cities when I travel and offer to sell me drugs because they can just sort of tell, right? But nobody's ever offered me that. Okay, Miley Cyrus is more of a loony than a loady. We're not talking loonies, we're talking loadies. Okay, Eminem makes the list. I hate the fact that he's performed, but he's going to make the list too. We're going to just take your putting it in there. I love the fact that Lindsay Lohan, when she got assigned by the courts to go to rehab or whatever, threw a fit and insisted that she continues to be able to take her Adderall. I think she won that fight too. And like all the sobriety people are like, you can't take speed. She's like, it's a prescription. You give me my fucking Adderall and I'll stay in here. Otherwise, fuck you. Yeah, I like Lindsay Lohan. I approve of her middle fingery ways. She's not so explicitly middle fingery because she's a chick. And there's not really a social archetype for chicks being super middle fingery. Although I would say a good example of chicks pulling off middle fingery is the song Hot Mess. Man, I'm a hot mess. A hot mess. Lodi as in somebody who's, has a drug enthusiasm. I agree sex trafficking is a real problem. I agree human trafficking is a real problem. And I think it's absolutely fucking terrible. It's also proof that slavery has nothing to do with race. I'll tell you what reverses aging, Lawnmower. I'm pretty sure. Cigarettes. Look at this youthful skin. Okay. Now, let me show you what I looked like before I started smoking cigarettes. Big change, huh? So pretty much, I'm thinking it's the cigarettes, how many say young and vibrant, vigorous, full of vim, and Viceroys. I used to smoke some Viceroys occasionally when they used to sell Viceroys in the store. A pack of Viceroys. Yeah. The more I turn to the helpful friends of the Marlboro Corporation, the tauter and younger my skin looks. Also, here's another helpful tip. If you want to keep your skin in tip-top shape, lie out in the hot sun. Let the sun do the work for you. Its cooking rays will tighten and youthify your skin. All right. Well, the thing is, a couple of years ago, one of my fun arguments I'd have, now I don't think people would think this anymore because people have grown up a little bit in the wrong direction, but still. I used to have this argument, well, slavery is totally racist. Slavery has absolutely nothing to do with race. People would want to argue with me about it. It's crazy, huh? It does. This proprietary blend of tobaccos, herbs, spices, and special chemicals helps keep you fit and firm, looking younger every day. You know, they can't pay me to advertise their product. They're not allowed to. It's not legal. I've got some good news, Marlboro Corporation. You don't have to pay me. I'm proud to advertise your product. You make a hell of a cigarette. Sexism is slavist. Okay? Don't be slavist. Look, I'm so tired of you slavists talking shit about slavery, okay? Slave owners are people too. The transatlantic trade from my ass cheeks to your mom's face has a lot to do with race. Because I'm racing her to the finish line. I mean, slavery correlates with victimizability, right? And you might be very victimizable for a brief period of time, as was fictionalized in the movie Taken, or you might be subject to victimizing because of your overarching circumstances and stuff, you know? Well, back in the day when we had the transatlantic slave trade from Africa to the United States, in that context, there was this sort of grandfathered in idea of slavery that went along with conquering. Now, it just so happened that that idea went along in that particular moment in history with conquering, with setting up the colonies, right? And that whole thing correlated with civilizing the savages. Now, once you've decided that these people are both conquered and savages, and you've already sort of grandfathered in the slavery idea, well, then there you go. I'm quite sure that slavers didn't only take Africans to be slaves. If they saw any kind of indigenous savage, they probably thought they were fair game. Yeah, Liam Neeson jumping a fence in 15 jump shots is one of the most remarkable pieces of filmmaking mishandling you will ever see. It's just like, who made this decision? I guess it was probably better than any other way of doing it because Liam Neeson looked so slow and old and fat getting over the fence, you know? And so sick of having his loved ones taken. Taken 12. Who would they take this time, Liam? I don't fucking know. Who cares? You gotta go save them. Okay. I'm going down these stairs in my wheelchair. Just a shit ton of jump cuts, okay? Because otherwise they're gonna look really dumb. Taken 12. When there's nothing left to take. Liam Neeson sitting alone in an empty room, and these like swarthy human traffickers come in. Anybody else here besides you? No, you took everybody. You got any Tupperware? You took that too. Oh yes, accept the present moment unconditionally. That's one of those things that, like, people advocate some sort of spiritual wisdom along the lines of be in the moment and, you know, relieve yourself from monkey mind. Those kind of pieces of advice are clearly and as far as I'm concerned, among the most telling bits of evidence as to why we need cognitive function. Those thinkers are not beginning at a point that accounts for why they are thinking the things they are thinking. They're still assuming that the things they are thinking are thought because they're the right things and they're smarter than everybody else in some sense, right? Like, well, I'm right because it's what I'm saying. Well, you got to acknowledge to yourself that you're more right about certain kinds of things and less right about other kinds of things. And there's a reason for it. If you don't have that as a foundational thing and you start doing thinking about self-growth and spirituality, you will start spitting out a bunch of incorrectly universalized statements that are just bullshit. Oh, my persona protects ego, so it's a defense mechanism. You mean my ideation is a defense mechanism? Are you sure about that, Eckhart Tolle? Doesn't feel like a defense mechanism. Your overly reductive holistic nonsense sounds like a lame mechanism. Is this the mechanism you used to be lame, Eckhart Tolle? I think so. Eckhart Tolle doesn't ever say shit about shit. He just sits there and looks wise, right? See how in the moment I am? I'm so in the moment right now. It's so great. If you want to really live, you got to stop being in your head and be in the moment, like me. Like right now, I'm not Eckhart Tolle. I'm just me in the moment because I'm so wise. I'm not going to say that explicitly, though. I'm just going to go like this. You have within you the truth of what I'm saying that I don't explain. Believe it. See how wise I look? Fucking Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart Tolle deserves what part of my what and what part of his what? My booted foot up his ass is correct. In fact, I have a video from a few weeks ago, I guess, or I don't know when. It's called Eckhart Tolle Ruins My Morning. I made the mistake of watching one of his videos, and by the end of half of it, I was spitting mad. And it's like, listen, Eckhart, you are what's wrong with the world. People think you are some sort of wise guru, but if you were to actually engage with me directly for 5 minutes, I'd put you in a fucking meat grinder. And you'd come out the other side clinging desperately to your vestiges of guru-iness. But amongst the shatters of your unsustainable bullshit. See, proper gurus kick ass. Watch the Astartes Project. What's the Astartes Project? You have to sell it a little bit more than that, James. Just watch this thing you've never heard of. It's probably not going to get the job done. The lethal tag team of Eckhart Tolle and Russell Brand. Right. Oh, yeah, that's right. It was Eckhart Tolle and Russell Brand ruined my morning. Oy. I'm sure they could sit there and circle jerk each other and say nothing for hours and hours and hours. No, I'm not being ground into hamburger right now. This is not pain I'm feeling. No, I'm gonna really push this image thing. It's the same thing as reality. No, Eckhart. Eckhart, you make my neck hurt. Why? Because you riddle my neck with tumors of wrongness. That's why. How do you feel, Eckhart, knowing that? It's a clip one guy made. You said a thing that reminded me, can't remember what though, lol. Fair enough. Yep, fair enough. So, what was the title of this video? Standing Out. Enigma of Identity. Really should have been like tangled fuckery of identity rather than enigma. It's really what it is. Like trying to stand out. It's a tangled fuckery of identity. Should have been Enigma 3 bullshit. Should have been Enigma 3 bullshit. I don't want to be Enigma 3. Enigma 3 sounds hard. I like being 7 and 4 because like, 7 and 4 is like spoiled. If you got 7 and 4 in your tri-type, your first name is Spoil and your last name is D. I will say this. He's better than Teal Swan, who seems to me almost gleefully negative in her bullshit. It's like, if you're just making up complete bullshit, why not make up something nice? You're just gonna arbitrarily make up a bunch of bullshit, sell it as though it were meaningful, and you don't choose to make it pleasant? Why not? I guess maybe that's a selling point. Oh, she's, Teal Swan must be right because she doesn't always tell you what you want to hear. So, a surprisingly large majority of her pieces of bullshit are not only bullshit but negative. That's not not a reason to further embrace her. Please use the word gaff. Lawnmower. It expresses the same thing, but it avoids those who are sensitive about the GAY word. Some people are a little sensitive. We have some GAYs around here. I don't know if you recognize that. Sean Ryan Barron is a GAY, a certified one. And, yeah, it's fine. I don't care if we hurt their feelings anyway. But what I'm saying is, it'll be hard to win the argument. It's hard to win the argument if they go like, okay, so why are you using something I choose as part of my identity as a universal term for shitty, right? I still use it anyway because, I don't know, I grew up on it, right? But nowadays I say gaff instead. It's safe. If somebody asks me what it means, I can make up whatever I feel like on the spot to be funny, right? Gaff, it stands for Girls Around Firemen. Yeah, I'm doing a documentary called Girls Around Firemen. Gaff's our working title. Did they do that in South Park? I didn't know that. That's one of those things that I encounter with NTP shit, NTP media. It's like, I always feel like they're stealing my jokes. Or other people think I'm stealing theirs, which is way worse because I'm not. If I do steal them, I credit them or talk about them, Oh, they say casually. Well, they're sort of trying to post recapture renormalize in a better way, I guess. But I like gaff because it's GAF, but also you can make it mean whatever you want. Like, first of all, I want to point out that the initial example of what gaffery is, that we have some examples of gaffery. The number one example, the first one, the origin story of gaffery, reference Joaquin Phoenix. Now, I have no idea what Joaquin Phoenix's sexual orientation is, but it does explain really clearly what it means to be gaff. Joaquin Phoenix is so fucking gaff. I just want to go up to him and go, hey, you knock it off. You know? But it has nothing to do with who he humps. Who else is gaff? Bono. Can you get any gaffer than Bono? No. Well, you can a little bit gaffer than Bono. You get Joaquin Phoenix, who's incredibly gaff, the lead singer of Smashing Pumpkins. Talk about people I want to go up to and just be like, you listen to me. You need to stop being so fucking awful. It hurts my soul that you exist the way you do. You need to change how you are. You are fundamentally bad and wrong. I want to tell that Smashing Pumpkins guy. If you ever see an interview of him, completely insufferable, intolerable. So badly in need of a talking to. He hurts my FE. Ugh. Shlomo, will you knock it off with this groupist shit? It's like, it's not any less groupist because you justify with God. God doesn't care who you hump, as long as you're not doing something deceitful. Like, this is the thing. Sexual relationships are more important than people casually tend to take them these days. I think so. I think that it's not really possible for certain kinds of people anyway to successfully engage in long-term serial casual sexual relationships because they're meaning-based people, namely intuitives. Intuitives don't really vibe, in my opinion, with serial casual sex as an approach. So I understand that there's a intuitive sense that there's something wrong with being degenerate, and that of indulgences, wallowing in sex is perhaps the most dangerous kind of wallow. You're most likely to engage in wickedness. You're most likely to deceive people. You're most likely to hurt people. And you're most likely to be lying to yourself or others to some extent, right? If you do it a lot, it's almost certain to be the case. So in that regard, I think it's fair to say sexual behavior as an indulgence is one that people ought to self-police themselves more about than other kinds of indulgence areas, because it so directly engages intimately with another person. God's vehemently against what? Homosexuality? Whatever. I mean, I don't buy that. It's silly. Makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense. Just think about it. I mean, there's just no warrant for it. God doesn't, like, all the parts of God and Jesus that make sense as resonant spiritual truths and that make me say this is fundamentally superior to other traditions. The reason all that is the case is because Christian God provides guidance on affirmative moral decisions, but not so much prohibitions, because Christianity, unlike other moral traditions, by and large, respects the division between negative and positive moral aspects. What you're saying is God's treating a positive moral question as though we're a negative moral question. And I mean, I don't believe in a dumb God that would make that mistake. So I just don't accept that part. It's not in any of the commandments. It's not one of the 10 commandments. It's not anything that Jesus preached. It's not consistent with forgiveness as a preferred modality or tolerance, which both things are things Jesus talked about. I mean, I suspect if Jesus were here, instead of focusing so much on how homosexuality is bad, why don't you go wash some poor people's feet? And I'd say, because I'm not that hardcore, Jesus, fuck off. It's like I'm not going to do things that I know are. I'm not going to affirm things that I know are wrong, unless there's some reason to believe that that's a more correct understanding of God. And there's no reason to think that a more correct understanding of God would understand God as making that fundamental mistake of mistaking a positive moral question for a negative moral question. He's not displayed that tendency across the board. That's one of the things about Christianity that makes it great, is that unlike other religious traditions, it doesn't fail to make the distinction. It does make the distinction. In other words, it doesn't make it explicitly, maybe. There's no clear framework or anything. But by and large, Christianity's values, principles, commandments, whatever, are all consistent with the idea that we prohibit things that are negative moral violations, and we don't make such declarative certainties about things that are positive moral questions. Now, I get adultery being a sin because that's a breach of contract. It's a misuse of your own property rights. Your body's your property. You can use it in ways that are morally permissible, or you can use it in ways that are morally impermissible. Adultery is morally impermissible because you have engaged in essentially a breach of contract. Nobody should be stoned, okay? There's no reason to stone anybody. Certainly not for adultery. The thing is, adultery is a genuine moral violation. That's a negative moral question. And it's a negative moral question regardless of whether your partner is same sex or other sex. It's the same exact moral question. It's a matter of breach of contract. If there's an understanding, if you trust them, and there's a clear understanding about what the expectations are, and a clear commitment towards meeting those expectations, and the other person in secret violates those expectations, then that's breach of contract. That's a clear rights issue. It's clearly a misuse of your own property rights to set those expectations and then breach that understanding. So it makes sense that adultery is prohibited because it's a negative moral question. It does not make sense that choosing option B is prohibited because option B is not a rights violation in any sense. It's not a boundary crossing or trespassing in any sense. So it doesn't make any sense. It wouldn't be treated like that by any just God who might say it's not indicated in a positive moral fashion. But if he were to be declarative about that, then he wouldn't be treating positive moral questions the way he ought to be treating them, which is non-definitively. I believe in the best God, the best understanding of God. So I want my understanding of God to be as close to actual God as possible, which means I don't force God to wear hats that don't fit and say, but the book says, no, God's smarter than that. If the adultery is sultry, then that makes it 2 points more sensual and half a dozen degrees more tender. Let's take the next call here on Adultery Hotline. Listen, James, I've talked to you about this before. You need to leave everybody's organs, all of them, inside of their bodies. You've got to stop taking people's organs away. They need them. There's only one organ you can even conceivably take away, maybe two, and they'll be okay. I guess, sure, you could take a kidney, or the appendix, but you just take them willy-nilly. I'm tired of it. You leave people's organs alone. Also, I want you to leave the state of Oregon alone. Washington State has mentioned that they've seen you harassing it recently. Look at this. These are my underwears. Did I forget to download my new hardware? What new hardware? You mean your mom's face? No, it's here. Came in the mail today. There's experiential truth in the flesh, and there's some sort of metaphysical truth in the flesh as well, if it's part and parcel of a healthy, correct relationship. Because I know that Rachel and I have grown together by being ever more trusting of each other. And the more you trust the other person, the more you can relax. And but that follows from monogamy. And this is my position on it. I am a huge proponent of monogamy compared to most people. Maybe not as huge as, say, a Catholic priest or something, but that's because I'm a meaning type, in part, which is to say, I need to know the meanings are static and are going to stay that way, and I don't have to think about them. The reality of things is stuff I can work with because it's just experiential. It doesn't really matter, quote unquote, right? To me. Whereas I need to know that I'm on the same page word-wise with my significant other so that then I can relax. It's one of the reasons why intuitives should be together, I think. Hey, Lawnmower, I do have my own perspective on the matter, but it more consistently aligns with the correct and true understanding of God than things that force God to wear hats of inconsistency and ugliness. I will not sit here and be told by you that it's better to force your understanding of God to wear this ridiculous hat that clearly does not belong on it than it is to excise the hat. You are incorrect about that. Being so beheld by a given text that you would accept this bastardization of what clearly is true and just and right and good in order to conform with the text that was not written by either God or Jesus is insane and silly and unnecessary. We know better. You have your own personal relationship with God too. You can explore that issue if you'd like. There's no reason to not request clarification if you're confused about God's will about something. And perhaps you should. It's like if I were so concerned about what that book said in that one little spot or whatever, I'd be very concerned. I'd be like, God, I don't mean to be not humble or whatever, but you're going to have to explain this to me, because if you expect me to believe this shit, then you're clearly not the true Almighty God, because the true Almighty God doesn't succumb to arbitrary ontological assault. You're not a bully and an asswipe. So that God is not the one true Almighty God, because the one true Almighty God is not an asswipe. And since it's completely unwarranted by anything, as I said, and it's inconsistent with the other general persistent approach that negative moral questions are different than positive moral questions, I think we can fairly assume that some probably well-intentioned but misguided author back in Bible days drew an ugly hat onto God where he should not have. Right. So, right. You're insisting that this man-made vehicle, these words from that are not the word of God, that we ought to prioritize that over our intuitive grasp of what is godly. And since my intuitive grasp of what is godly is absolutely consistent with any reasonable moral calculus, I can faithfully stand up and say, okay, no, look, it's like if we looked at the Bible and it was all like this, it was all illustrated. We had this one copy of it, let's say. And then on one picture, there was like a mustache brewing on somebody with little devil horns and a penis on it, right? It's like you'd insist that God approves of this because it's in the Bible. Well, no, clearly somebody just drew those on there, right? The same thing happened with lots of little bits of the Bible that are bullshit. That's how it happens. Not everybody's a good servant of God. If you were tasked with writing some bit of Bible or wrote something that turned out to be in the Bible or however it worked, I don't know how it worked, it doesn't mean you were a great servant of God. You may have fucked it up, right? I'm not a perfect servant of God. I fuck up shit sometimes. Why do we put so much faith in other people to be perfect servants of God? And I want to stress, I am not taking a hubris approach here. I'm not saying I know better than God. I'm saying God knows better than that. Well, look, I mean, there's inherent subjectivity in any magical thinking frame. So you can't hold me accountable to objectivity because as soon as we start talking about God, we've thrown that out the window and we're talking magical thinking. Namely, not the sort of thing you make advocacies about. But if you want to nitpick this advocacy point, I'm saying you'd be better served to believe what you know is godly than to know what is godly because of what you believe. God is a virtue and not an object. Life is a highway. All day long. Did you know that life is a highway, or in the media? Also, right in the night. Love is an elevator. Good point. Thank you, Martinell. I appreciate it. Do I fear hell? No. I have no opinion about what happens after death. I have no idea. I trust God will know what to do with me. One or the other. I don't worry about hell. First of all, that's another one of those things that, you know, I do believe in hell while you're alive. I have discovered in my own life that making bad choices creates your own personal hell. Now, I know that most Christians would say that's much too non-literal an interpretation, and that's fine. But I'm just saying, I don't need to be threatened into doing the right thing. Being good is its own reward, and trying to live more in accordance with what I consider a grand universal truth and destiny has never pointed me wrong before. You know, humility before God has never led me astray. No, lawnmower. Humility before God has never led me astray. Part of what that means is not succumbing to the mistake of thinking that this is the sort of thing we can make arguments about. That is the sort of thing we make affirmations about and argue about. And that's how we determine it's correct. It doesn't work like that here. We're not talking about cognitive functions. So what I'm saying is my appeal to your intuitive ability to understand God through a personal relationship with God is superior to alternate means when those alternate means seem to conflict with what we know is godly. I do have reverence for his authority. I don't have reverence for the Bible. Big difference. Now, granted, most of what I understand as Christianity is sourced from the Bible. But that doesn't mean that I must therefore take everything in the Bible and make that my understanding of Christianity. It's true that my understanding of Christianity should not be in major conflict with any of the core tenets of Christianity as they're universally understood, and it's not. But on this particular point, my point is it certainly seems possible that somebody and metaphorically drew a penis somewhere in the Bible, with like wearing a shirt that said boob patrol. And therefore that's what we should do. I mean, I know it seems to contradict the other stuff, but we should definitely go with it. Remember, not all the people who attempt to serve God necessarily do a good job. And if they're serving God by writing a bit of the Bible and it turns out to be bullshit, it's just their own bullshit, well, then they did a particularly bad job. Hopefully, most of that bullshit got excised by the various canon excisings, like how they'd say, okay, this is canonical or non-canonical. I think that's the word they use. Maybe there's another word for it, whether it counts as official Bible or not. Like Book of Enoch is not generally considered canonical. I've been reading Wikipedia stuff on the Bible lately because it's kind of trippy and interesting shit. It's like it's got this old school kind of and lo did the blah, which I like about it. That stuff appeals to me. I don't have a demo. A demo of what? Demonstration of what? Would you like me to transubstantiate you a bong rip? I could do that. All right, so I'm neither Jesus nor a saint or anything. I don't qualify even as a saint, but I am able to perform at least one miracle. I'm able, with the use of my propane torch, and because I have been endowed with this power as Archbishop of the Glorian Church, and also as the main guy of the God's Big Heaven Auxiliary Church, I'm able to transubstantiate this bong rip from my bong through my lungs into your brain. So this is my one miracle that I am able to perform. It's not enough to get me a sainthood. You need 3, I guess, is what they say in the Catholics. And you got to trust the Catholics when it comes to saints. They kind of cornered the market on saintry. I guess what do you call it? Saintry, sanctifinalia. There's a word for the study of saints. I can't remember it though. I'm not that familiar with that shit. That kind of Catholic language. Anybody know the word for the study of saints? It's almost on the tip of my tongue. It's like Haganelia or something, or no, there's a word for the study of saints. It's got like hag in it or something. It's got the word hag in it, I think, or hig or something like that. Somebody Google it for me, please. Eric, why should we Google it for you? Why don't you Google it yourself? Come on. Because I'm the host. I'm important. I'm supposed to be able to say, can somebody Google this? And you guys are supposed to do it. Thanks, lawnmower. Yeah. These aren't actually my own teeth. These are ivory. I got all real ivory teeth taken from real, recently killed elephants. I insist my ivory be fresh. You're a Calvinist? Well, what's the word? I know if only Winston's mom were here. Or Octavia Silva. There's only a couple of helpful people. The rest of us are all SE lazy. So I'm pretty happy with my new song. I don't think it's like hey it's HAIG something. That's what it is. HAIG something. I'm gonna Google it right now. Study of Saints. Study of Saints. Hagiography. Hagiography. Look, here, I'll put the word here. Yeah, there you go. Marge got it. Hagiography. I knew there was a word that meant study of saints, and I even remember that it had the word hag in it. That's pretty good, huh? I'm feeling pretty, pat myself on the back about that. You should actually pat yourself on the back when you're feeling like patting yourself on the back. The emperor spends his eternity preventing hordes of demons flooding mankind. To ignore this and abandon your duty is heresy. Heresy. That's not how you spell heresy. Look, I don't care how much you like Calvin and Hobbes, Marge. It's not a religion. You're going to have to grow up someday. Your toy tiger can't play with you forever. Presbyterians are not a saint. Presbyterians. I don't really even know the difference between all these different kinds of Christians. Remember, I was raised an atheist. I don't know if people really necessarily remember that or not, but my parents were both fairly like Christian disliking atheists. Oh, those damn Christians trying to put up a cross again downtown. I hate those Christians. Like that kind of shit. For no reason, really, except my dad saw them as anti-science, sort of like anti-science and anti-progress. And my mom saw them as pro-censorship. Like they try to get you to stop teaching certain books. As an English teacher, that was kind of like the only thing that I can really ever think, any reason why she didn't like Christians, that would be the thing she'd freak out about. It's like, those Christians have gotten this book banned, and it makes me so mad. But they didn't impress upon me that like you should hate Christians or something. Certainly I accepted and had to accept that everybody around me was Christian, that nobody in my childhood at school, except for me, and I didn't self-identify openly as it because it was like, wait, you mean everybody's Christian? I'm the only one who's like this? who doesn't buy that shit? Oh, wow. So anyway, obviously I think it's a good way to prepare somebody for a meaningful experience with religion, because there's the idea, well, if you teach kids when they're young about God and stuff, that'll help set the stage for them later on to be Christians or something. It's probably the opposite. I bet if you talk to them about God a lot in sort of a logical way that is about making affirmations and arguments about it and stuff, then you'll set the stage for your kid to do some serious thinking about it. And eventually, if they're serious enough about it in their thinking, they're going to realize that there are certain areas of life, certain fundamental questions, certain matters central to ontology that need resolution and that are currently being resolved through smoke and mirrors, um, at best. And at that point is when you become a meta rational, or you don't. Ecclesiarchy embraces the ways of technology and science. I've never heard that word before. Ecclesiarchy. Until I was 15 and society was becoming so immoral, I said, hold up. There's got to be a point where we stop fundamental questions. Society's not becoming more immoral one more. That's just not the case. As somebody who grew up in the 70s and went to school in the 70s, who taught school all through, like, Delilah, for example, when Delilah was in middle school, I was teaching school, and who still engages with schools and kids and stuff. I can tell you that society is more moral now, probably than it's ever been. There's a lot more transparency. The transparency is what makes morality. In other words, if what you are doing is wrong, then you will not be able to sustain doing it transparently, not because, oh, well, people shame you, but because at a certain point, once it ceases to be like criminally awful or something, like, if you take homosexuality, for example, there was a time period where you couldn't talk openly about it because you might experience actual consequences, harms that were basically rights violations. Once that period of time passed by, then you have people who, can choose to talk about it openly. So you're going to be more aware of it, but it's a more moral time period because it's not a moral issue anyway. But regardless, I don't think it's necessarily inappropriate to. I don't think the teacher should have brought up sex toys, but I don't think it's necessarily inappropriate for the teacher to discuss the question if it were linked to a specific psychology thing. But I'd be hard pressed to come up with an example. A quiz question. Which of the following sex toys should I buy on Amazon today while you guys are taking this test? I will buy the one that is the most popular answer. Huge strap-on dildo? Let's see. French maid dress? I don't really know a lot of. I can't think of a bunch of different sex toys really off the top of my head. But anyway, maybe something like if we would be open to it or something. I don't recall as much. Terrible. Well, all right, let me transubstantiate your bottom rip. I'm giving this one to Lawnmower. I think Lawnmower deserves it. Hard day's work. He's mowed a lot of lawns today. Mowed a lot of lawns and stowed a lot of dawns. Here you go. Lawnmower, I hereby transubstantiate this bottom rip for you. Transubstantiate. Now, obviously, I couldn't feel any effects of that because they all got transubstantiated to lawnmower. But I have a feeling that's probably a bell ringer. You may want to sit down for a moment, lawnmower. Literally, your religion is making junk. Does it start out as non-junk and you turn it into junk? I'm gonna go get a Coke. I think that if you want to tell somebody that their room smells bad, you should walk in and go, "Oh my God, it's like I'm holding a bouquet of chodes and sphincters. I am opposed to the death penalty. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am." Well, that's clearly the wrong way to approach it, probably, but look, people should approach it the same way that I approach it. With good, cold, hard logic. Okay, Mr. Know-It-All. God, Eric, you're so insufferable. I know. I can't help it. I've been insufferable like yesterday and today, especially. Is it already 2 a.m.? I didn't sleep last night. God damn it. I didn't take that much. I barely took any. But, when you first get on a new bottle, it really hits you like a wallop. Let's be honest, Obama won because of virtue signaling. I mean, I think Obama won because he did a good job of selling his bland, schmaltzy mashup of aphorisms and nonsense. Yeah, I'm sleeping tonight for sure. In fact, I may, at some point, I'll probably end this stream and then I'll probably start another stream. One more. Look, it doesn't matter, first of all, at all, because if we evaluate the situation at the time, the fact is he was the preferable choice and he was running. Race is not a real thing. So people like to play pretend a lot. I'm going to pretend that I'm supporting something that doesn't exist. Okay, well, you go ahead and pretend that. But it's certainly not something to pay any attention to. Just like I don't pay attention to the people who insist that we can tell who the best president is by their cheekbone shape or something. I'm not going to pay any attention to those. I'm certainly not going to come up as, I can't believe those cheekbone shaped people. It's like, I mean, the world's full of crazy nonsense. What can I say? Obama is very charismatic. He was very charismatic, you know. He's got the whole EHP thing. I hear myself talking like him a lot, actually. America is not a country where we're going to tolerate half the population having the man when the other half has to live in deprivation and destitution. We're not going to take that. We can do more. On the one hand, he's like, he's got, there's certain times I do it naturally. I didn't do a very good job right there, but certain times I do it naturally where I'll be listening back to a stream or something and go, oh, right there, that's a sentence that sounds just like Obama. He has a certain kind of cadence to finishing out the sentences. You know, he's got that thing. But I still say he's an ENTP who shed his, like, you know, say, okay, well, look, I think I'm getting this FE shit down. This is working. I'm just going to shutter off these parts of myself that are making people uncomfortable, and I'm just going to meow. I don't think he really realized that when he became president, he was not going to be dealing with a bunch of reasonable people who were going to fall in front of his FE and go, oh my God, Obama, you want that? Okay. You know, and he had people who hated him and stuff like that. He wasn't ready to go to political war, you know? He was weak. He was fundamentally weak. Why? Because he got there on his fucking FE. That's why. Lawnmower, for God's sake, what does that have to do with anything? I mean, every politician takes advantage of whatever press opportunities they can get their hands on. But the thing is, the problem with Obama ultimately is because he didn't get where he got in a bruising enough fashion, he was not prepared to do the job when he got there. And he basically holed up in the White House and tried to avoid dealing with the Republicans he got this fucking upside down Obamacare passed that should never have looked anything like it looks. And he just said, fuck this noise. Well, why? He had no strategy going in that made any sense. What strategy makes sense going in? You have, you know, it's like if you're running a special ops thing, and basically a presidential administration is like a set of special ops teams. You're trying to get shit done. You have a limited amount of missions you can undertake. And the bigger the mission, the more members of the various ops teams have to participate in it. If you're trying to get Congress to pass Obamacare, the entire administration is all in on this huge, massive project, huge bill, right? President, it's not the president's job to write legislation, remember? It's the Congress's job to do that. So you get a sense of his total lack of strategy of how to run the office. And you get the sense when you evaluate presidents in general, you get a sense that they all walk in there and realize all of a sudden they have no idea how to run the office. What does it mean to run a presidential office? Well, I mean, okay, here's the basic problem with the first one. Look, race is a word that works as a metaphysical only kind of tag. But people who use it insist it's not a metaphysical only tag, but rather a name for an actual quality in the physical world. So that's where the actual argument comes from, right? It's like if people insist that race, whatever words they have to say about race, link to they're talking about something meaningful because there's a quality that is an attribute of people that is real in the physical sense that they're referring to. Of course, the problem with talking about race is even if you could establish that somebody's racial label references an actual physical reality about them, it's always used insidiously. I've never heard anybody bring up race to make any good argument. It's not correctly used to justify anything, and it's always used incorrectly to justify bad ideas. I don't think. I think Biden is fairly far along mental deterioration. Having seen my mom, and I got an appointment to see her this Wednesday. But it's obvious. You can tell he's been going downhill slowly for quite a long time. He's simply not qualified medically, I guess you'd say. He's not well. He's not capable of doing a regular job, let alone being president of the United States. Trump is not nearly, I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen much sign of Trump showing dementia-like qualities. Trump's just stubborn and dumb. I mean, or I guess he's not stubborn and dumb. He's stubbornly dumb. Right. Well, like if you're going to make a good race joke, it's got to play with the idea of race jokes in some fashion. For example, I heard this joke a comedian made. I did not make this joke up. Some comedian I heard on TV made it up. He said, I was at a stoplight the other day. I was waiting at a stoplight, and there's a couple of white people in a car next to me, and all of a sudden somebody rear ends them. Well, it happens to be a cop in the gas station right there. He goes, woo, comes right over, gets out of the car, looks at the people in the front car, the white people, and looks at the people who rear-ended him, a couple of Asian people. He goes, the white people says, what the hell did they? Oh, I'm sorry. It was I fucked up the joke. So the Asian people were in the front car, okay, and the white people were in them, and the cop comes and goes, so what the hell, did you back into him? That's the joke. I totally fucked it up. Sorry, but like that's a good race joke because it's a joke about entrenched beliefs about something rather than actually a joke about the race. So you can totally, that one will work, right? If I hadn't totally butchered it. I don't normally butcher jokes like that. It makes me feel like just, bad Eric. Yeah, I mean, the thing about Trump is I don't think there's anything. I don't see a lot of signs of dementia, but maybe I don't think he's a good president. I don't think he's I don't think his worst, the like oh my God of Trump's presidency has as much potential for disaster as the oh my God of a Biden presidency, because you're literally putting the presidency in the hands of somebody you can't trust to drive a car. I would not trust Biden to drive a car. And the thing is, this is not some sort of political critique. I'm saying, like, if we have a man in fairly advanced dementia running for president, well, I mean, he's obviously he can't do the job. He may have slowed down a tick or two, but he's not showing what I'm saying is textbook dementia signs. Okay, well, can you come up with a good argument? Because every time it's used to justify something, it's used to justify something that applies to some people and not others because of race, right? It imposes your ideas of race onto another individual whom you perceive as that race. And it's a form of, I guess, uh, like ontological box forcing, you may call it. Don't ontologically box force me. Guys, look, I had a rough day. Somebody was ontologically box forcing me. What box were they trying to force you into? They were telling me that I always crash my bike. I hate that. I don't always crash. I crash my bike not even any more than anybody else. How do you get the nomination? A lack of a real, any sort of real, honest political activity in the country, I guess. Partially COVID, but there's no real political activity. The DNC is sort of running the Democratic Party, but they keep going, well, I guess I don't know how to drive. Do you know how to drive? Yeah, I know how to drive. I guess I don't know how to drive either. Do you know how to drive? That's the Democratic Party. Nobody knows who's running the shit because the people who are supposed to be running it are just a bunch of unelectables. It's like you got the leftists basically in control of the narrative at the DNC. The Democratic Party, if you ever wanted to put a scenario where a party was set to capitalize on another party's like completely unforeseeable disaster, Trump is a disaster to the Republican Party, okay? And the Republican Party didn't know it was an unforeseeable disaster. I'm sure at the beginning of it, everybody was saying what I was saying. Talk about me intuiting wrong. For a long time, the thing I said, no way Trump's gonna win. I mean, but of course, the Republicans kept throwing out whoever they had, and they all looked like idiots compared to just Trump's idiocy, which at least was honest, kind of, Yeah, I haven't slept. I need sleep tonight, though, for sure. Like, okay, I mean, there's sort of this implicit nod, this sort of tacit nod thing that goes, you're electing Kamala Harris. It's fine. She'll be fine. The fuck? Who wants to elect her? Are they trying to poison their dementia patient candidate to make sure nobody is willing to vote for them? I mean, come on. Why give the hard left so much airtime at the DNC? You are just alienating people. And there's a smugness to the whole thing, which is totally undeserved, uncalled for, and miggity von meow. Yeah, I had to look up something myself. It was a burden, let me tell you. Well, I'm transracial, so that should give me an advantage. Because whatever race stuff other people bring up, I'll just point out that I've been all races, almost all of them, and many of them multiple times. I've experienced racism from every angle. I know what it's like to see the hatred in another man's eyes because of the color of my skin. And I always say, hey, judge me by the color of my character, like Martin Luther King said, or quality of, or whatever he said. Well, embracing her colored roots and emphasizing it. Oh, she's saying she's Asian? Well, that's fine. As long as she acknowledges that race is completely arbitrary and she's making it up for no reason. I don't know why the chat replays aren't working right now. I believe I have. I mean, I know I've checked it a couple of times. I have it set to yes, chat replay, and I don't know. It's a recent problem, maybe the last couple of weeks, maybe less. I'm not sure exactly. I haven't been able to figure it out yet, but I'll look into it some more. Hey, I'm Indian too, but feather, not dot. You know me. They call me the Scout. That's my Indian name. One of my Indian names. Also, Eagle Sight, the Flying Indian. They call me that too. Also because of my amazing eyesight. I can spot a buffalo at 300 miles. It's true. The whole tribe would count on me when we were starving. Find us an animal. Well, there's one. And they'd, where? Well, it's 300 miles away. Oh. And, they hit me with a stick or whatever. You'd think I would have been popular. The problem is, I really couldn't see that well in distances between 10 feet and about 100 miles. That was always a blurry mess for me. But after 100 miles, up to 300, it was crystal clear. Yeah, my Indian heritage, I think, is going to go a long way in this election. As a certified real American Native American Indian feather, not dot. Okay, listen, I am a real certified Native American, or as you white people like to say, Indians. Okay, we're called Native Americans, but please call me an Indian. I just prefer the term. I mean, look, you should, because I call you cowboys. It's fair. I refer to white people as cowboys. You can refer to me as an Indian because that's what I am. One of the little-known Arcadia tribe, lost tribe of Arcadia Indians. Well, I mean, not lost, I guess. You see, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I suppose probably in conjunction with the federal government, all licenses all the time recently opened up a few opportunities to be a licensed real Native American Indian, feather not dot. So that's what I chose to be. I got together a few friends. Of course, you do need to have a superpower. Mine was super sight, as I've already indicated, especially good at spotting buffaloes between 100 and 300 miles away. But, I can spot all kinds of things between there. I can spot a horse. I can spot, the perfect Christmas tree. I can always see the perfect Christmas tree at 250 miles. I was not the chief. No, I was not so popular. Running prairie, he said, stop staring at my girlfriend's tits. I said, I'm not. He said, yeah, you are. He threw a rock. There went my super sight. Also, I should mention, I briefly had super hearing. The problem with super hearing, of course, is if you have super hearing, everything's incredibly loud. Yeah. So you got to walk around. When the baby would cry in the teepee next to me, I would just be like, shut the fucking baby. But I have to say it really quiet because even I was, especially me, I was incredibly loud in my own ears. Super hearing is not what it's cracked up to be. Anywho, politics. These incompetent buffoons, they are rightly called politicians, and I would hope to be referred to as a statesman and to make the distinction meaningful. These Tittering buffoons. That's what I want to call them. Tittering buffoons, these people. I know I sound arrogant and off-putting and haughty and awful. But it's just the first couple days on the bottle of Adderall, you know. Just got to take it down a notch, Eric. Don't be such a douchebag. It's hard. It sort of like runs deep in me to be all like, meh, 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 and be all like sassy. Anyway, so yeah, I've got plenty of Indian heritage. By Indian, of course, I mean Native American, and by Native American, I mean Indian feather, not dot. Biden's not trying to do anything, Winston's mom, except hide his increasingly all-consuming and I'm sure terrifying dementia. Cheers to John Wayne. I'm going to cheers John Wayne as well, Winston's mom. Here you go, John Wayne. Long may you ride into the western sunset of your Hollywood dream. It's quite possible, I would say even very possible, that despite the fact that the media portrayed John Wayne's death as linked to smoking, and several other of his contemporaries' deaths as linked to smoking, it seems quite likely that their cancers were instead linked to the movie The Conqueror, filmed downwind of the Nevada test site, where they blew up like 15 nuclear bombs above ground in the couple of years before, or in the fairly short time period around, and maybe even during the shooting of this film. And to make matters worse, Howard Hughes carted back 60 tons of dirt from the site to make the shooting in Hollywood match the scenery they took out in the desert, right? But it was all full of nuclear fallout. And out of 220 cast people involved, 90-something of them died of cancer. And the normal rate, maybe it wasn't died, maybe it just got cancer, because the normal rate surprised me. The normal rate for getting cancer out of 220 would be 30-some people, which seems like a fairly high number, because you're looking then at 1 out of 8. No, I have not, and thank you for the suggestion. Is it about the wildlife come back in the absence of the people? Is it like that? Or is it about the Chernobyl disaster? Is it a miniseries, or is it a documentary? Or you said it's a miniseries. Let's just take you at your word and assume it's a miniseries. So it's like a dramatized telling of some aspect of it. Is it about the actual meltdown? Tell me a little more. Put the Blame on Mame. Gilda, 1946. Arguably Howard Hughes' best film. Certainly Rita Hayworth's best movie. She should have won the Oscar for Best Hair. They don't have an Oscar for Best Hair, Winston's mom. But you know what they do have an award for? Best Hissy Fit. It's an award given out by the Teen Choice Awards. I was looking up Sandra Bullock tonight because we watched the movie Speed with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. First of all, do you know that both Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock are 7 years older than me? Would you guess that? Looking at me? Yeah. They're actually, if you care about generation lines, which I really don't, but if you do, I think they technically qualify as boomers. whereas I am definitely Gen X. Anywho, probably many people would assume that Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock are younger than me, but they're not. They're 7 years older than me. Sandra Bullock is very likable. Who's Jessie? You remember when Jessie cheated on her and I actually felt sad for her? I feel sad when people get cheated on. I know how much it hurts. I've been cheated on. My first wife did that. It was, even though I didn't even like her, it was still very painful. Sandra has foreskin on her face. Why would you say that, lawnmower? I don't think she has foreskin on her face. I don't think people grow foreskin on their face. It's just called wrinkles. See? Just because it's wrinkly doesn't mean it's a scrotum. Well, she makes love just like a woman. Oh. I misinterpreted that entirely. My mistake. I think you were intentionally unclear to provoke that mistake. I am getting tired. I think I need to go to bed. I am going to play a good night song, though, before I do on the guitar. A good night song, a song to remember that every November it's time for our squattage and tie. Squattage. Squattage, the new fitness attribute that keeps on giving. Have you seen my squattage score? Squattage? Yeah, it's how many times you can squat while holding a big pot full of a lot of Oh, Eric, will you never learn anything? Will you stop not ever learning nothing about anything? I'm so sick of it. God, you are slow as molasses, mental molasses. Come on now, get it right. You just haven't scolded yourself enough. I don't know. Does that really work? Of course it does. Nothing works better than scolding yourself. You haven't lived if you haven't scolded yourself today. So Mom always used to say. She didn't really say that. It's getting late and I'm getting tired. I wish it was somewhat wired for more. But really, Anna, I need to snore. They say man can't live on bread alone. They say that you got other problems to own. Feels nice to play the guitar sometimes. Feels like, it feels like, I guess it's Fi? It must be Fi I'm experiencing. What song do I want to play? I want to play. Let's see. Oh, yeah, I want to play this. I want to play that other one too. If Jesus was people but absent of sin, he must then have struggled with regular men and women, of course. They too were present, disciples all warily eyeing the lesson. People were Jesus, they'd know as they think, and everyone's work would be true, Feelings once spoken would sit where they sing. We'd all know just what to do. But people aren't Jesus once they're betrayed. The easy believing forever is lost. Maybe naivete is not to be saved, and the wise pay a terrible cost. Does virtue require a rational take, or is virtue that's reasoned invariably fake? Does musing itself just distract from the flow, or is care better served by deliberate and slow? But people aren't Jesus once they're betrayed. The easy believing forever is lost. Maybe naivete is not to be saved. The wise pay a terrible cost. The wise pay a terrible cost. No one you thought you knew, act like you never have met. The life you made for two has faded to regret. There's no one unshaken, we all have been shook. Being forsaken don't mean you're forsook. And though in the past we've been hung out to dry, we'll find them at last if we're willing to try. But people aren't Jesus once they're betrayed. The easy believing forever is lost. Baby naivete is not to be saved, but the wise pay a terrible cost. Yeah, baby naivete is not to be saved, but the wise pay a terrible cost. Yeah, the wise pay a terrible cost. Thank you. Thank you. That was called If Jesus Was People, or some other title that I'm not really sure what the title is yet. But that would be a fine title. I'm going to play one more song now, which is called 30,000 Days. That's right. It's a lot of days. Not to take considerably less time than that to play the song, I assure you. It's not 30,000 days in duration, if you were concerned about that. No need to be, I promise. starkly, dramatically less time than that. Here we go. 30,000 days. Too many expectations. Not even worth a damn. 30,000 nights. Sleep off intoxication. Otherwise, you won't escape the plan. I wasted half my days trying another's way. Who can tell me my priorities? Is there anybody who knows the key? 'Cause I'm tired of doing it wrong. Want direction and have all along. Wait until I know. Or is that just hesitation? Clarity's no good once your chance is gone. What I need to show is it's so below my station. I'm tired of doing it wrong. I wasted half my days trying another's ways. Who can tell me my priorities? Is there anybody who knows the key? 'Cause I think I'm doing this wrong. 'Cause I think I'm doing this wrong. 'Cause I think I'm doing it wrong. Doing it wrong. It felt good. Felt satisfying. Like, it's been a long time since I played the guitar. I think like a couple weeks probably since I picked it up. Maybe a week and a half or something. I don't know. Satisfying. Feel like a good song. I don't quite have. Keep messing up certain part of it, but whatever. I'll get it down. Satisfying to sing and play though. In a pretty good place in the range for me. If I don't try to do the up part, if I don't take the ill-advised course of trying the up part. All right, let's try Sammy's song. I like this song a lot too. I like to play it. I like to play it with my fingers and I play it with my eyes and I play it with my pies. Okay, let me get rid of this thing by going piao. Piao. No, it's not piaoing. Okay. How about now? Will you piao? You piao, you piao. How? Now, cow. Okay. Good. Having successfully piao, we will pie. Excellent. Sammy has a story that need be told, and this is a song for an open road, and such a thing must always do its job. She married up kid to turn 19, 4 years into 3 kids, weary now and questioning the path. Agency, I place his discretion, like an intercourses, way too young. He isn't seeking fruit, is really just depression, making sure those underneath them always run. I duck at the 25 bourbon fun, and likewise dug at 21, and so forth, well up into middle age. Once that seemed to set him free, became his whole identity. Now Doug's about another drunken rage. Agency, I his discretion, locking in our courses. Way too young. The urgency word is really just depression. Offer you incentives, I haven't got a thing. Looks fun. Everybody's panicked about the kids. Ooh ah, lock 'em up with extra dexedrine. Ooh ah, mathematics to produce success or impose more unjust duress. Agency, basis discretion, locked in our courses. Way too young. The significance is really just projection. Offer you incentives. Haven't got a thing that's fun. Without consent, it's really just oppression. Parasites surviving, wages earned by lying while they feed the fear of dying. Feed upon the futures of the young. God damn it. Fucking Eric. Why do I fuck that up every single time? Why is it so difficult? Mess up the end like that just because you freaking. Yeah. Doomed. I'm doomed to always like have people go, makes me go my face. All right, ENFPs. This is my tongue sticking out song directed at you. And my tongue stick out at the ENFP. You're living on a time frame I will never know. Alienation and humanity's soul. Imagine you a future after the collapse, returning to the urgency of isolated past. Picturing community free of metaphysics. You're hunting buffalo while you're picking bread delicious, and the knowledge of the seasons, wisdoms of old. Fires blazing in the night to keep away the cold. Hostility is kept at bay by what you think is in the way of life as children of the land. Within a goblin weatherman. Imagining a history that never could have been. You lecture at the college, advancement is a sin. Lamenting disconnection and every corporate act. Asserting all your feelings and ignoring all the facts. Hostility is kept at bay by what you think is in the way of life as children of the land. Within a goblin weatherman, you find modernity just sober now. Wish you had lived any time but now, and your experience won't run afoul of exception. You visualize nobility sipping on some port. Tribes of peaceful savages and beautiful comport, but few of history's people ever thusly did cavort, 'cause life was solitary, nasty, brutish, poor, and short. Hostility is kept at bay by what you think is in the way. Life as children of the land within a godly weatherman. Within a godly weatherman. Yeah, I have to say, I'm playing unusually well tonight. I don't know if anybody's still here. There's only 9 people at this peak. I haven't looked at the numbers. Usually I lose about half people when I play the guitar. 8. Pretty good. So yeah, I'm playing unusually well right now. It feels good. But it's time for me to go to sleep now. So I really am going to leave. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it again. And see you tonight. See you tomorrow. Good night.